our first virtual meeting of the Wolfeboro Police Commission, regular meeting. This is not a regular scheduled meeting in terms of the date. It's usually the third Thursday. We've not met the last couple of months. We opted to do this tonight to try to get caught up, and we'll return to our normal schedule in June. More to follow on that later. Before we begin, I would like to read this preamble. It's a meeting preamble for during the COVID-19 emergency. Good evening. As chairman of the Wolfeboro Police Commission, I am declaring that emergency exists, and I am invoking the provisions of RSA 91-A:2, paragraph 3, subparagraph letter B. Federal, state, and local officials have determined that gatherings of 10 or more people pose a substantial risk to our community in its continuing efforts to combat the spread of COVID-19. I also find that this meeting is imperative to the continued operation of town government and services, which are vital to public safety and confidence during this emergency. As such, this meeting will be conducted without a quorum of this body physically present in the same location. At this time, I also welcome members of the public accessing this meeting remotely. Even though this meeting is being conducted in a unique manner under unusual circumstances, the usual rules of conduct and decorum apply. Any person found to be disrupting this meeting will be asked to cease the disruption. Should the disruptive behavior continue thereafter, that person will be removed from this meeting. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their name, please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. I am Chairman Steve Wood. I'm in my office upstairs in my home. There is nobody in the room with me at this time. Bob?
Robert Ryan, Commissioner, and I am alone in the room.
Okay. Chief?
I am in my study in my home on Winnipesaukee Drive, and I am alone.
Captain?
Yeah, I'm in my residence in the dining room, and I am alone.
Sherry?
I am at my residence, and I am in the dining room, and I'm alone.
Okay. Very good.
Steve, if you want to know, Tom Bell also is sequestered and alone.
Okay, Tom Bell, one of our liaisons from the Budget Committee. Thank you, Tom.
Steve, this is Matt Platch.
Oh, okay,
I'm
Matt.
in my car. Yeah, I'm in my car and I'm alone.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Matthew is our other liaison from the Budget Committee for the Police Commission. Okay, first order of business this evening is I'd like to consider a motion on the minutes from the February 20th, 2020 meeting, our last regular meeting, public meeting. Is that moved?
I so move.
A move by Commissioner O'Brien. I will second that. Roll call vote, Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
And Commissioner Wood is also a yes. So that passes. At this time, we'll move on to Chief Rondo and monthly reports.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, Chairman. And this is going to be a very abbreviated police report. Referring, gentlemen, to the first slide in your slide deck is the incident cases year to date. We had a 21.27% decrease from the month of March from 47 to 37. And that, I think, is reflective, obviously, of the change in police protocols relative to the COVID-19 policies that I changed actually back in February. So that is and that's going to be an indicative trend that you're going to see throughout. So moving on to the next slide in your slide deck, we are down 38.46% in the arrest status chart. If you refer to your arrest year to date 2020, you'll see we went from 26 arrests in March to 16 again. That is very indicative of the fact that we changed up a lot of our policing policies. In both of those slides, gentlemen, you have the backup data as you normally have if you want to drill down into the data there. The next slide in your deck is going to be collisions year to date. And again, you'll see a decrease, a good thing, a decrease from 6 in March to 2 in April. That's really good. Very unusual, but I think that's indicative of the fact of people are obeying the governor's stay-at-home order, and there are less people and less vehicles on the road, so less things for people to crash into. You have the backup data that show where those 2 crashes occurred. And moving on to the next slide in your deck is traffic stops year to date. And again, we're down from 109 in March to 25 in April. That's a 77.07% decrease. So again, from 109 to 25, again, indicative of the officers following my policy changes relative to the COVID-19 pandemic and steps that were taken to protect them. Now, interestingly enough, you'll see that the percentage of chance of getting a ticket has increased.
Chief, if you could hold on 1 minute, please. At this time, we are joined by Commissioner Joe Balboni. Joe, I read a preamble prior to the beginning of this meeting. I need you to give your name, where you're sequestered, and if there's anybody in the room with you at this time.
My name is Joe Bell.
Okay, and are you home? Okay, and okay, nobody's with you in the room. Very good, thank you. Chief, if you could continue with your monthlies.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And so you'll see where the traffic tickets have increased. There was basically a 16% chance of getting a ticket, and that again is reflective of how I changed up the policing policies and our guidance to the officers out there on the road. So what basically my guidance was: listen, if there's a very egregious motor vehicle offense occurs in your presence, or you investigate a complaint, a very egregious complaint, you need to take the appropriate action. So the reason why the ticket numbers haven't really changed, it's what has changed is the number of motor vehicle stops. The tickets, the enforcement action is really remaining the same. It's just that the motor vehicle stops, if you will, has greatly decreased. Does that make sense? Am I saying that right? Everybody understanding that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So you have the background. You have the background data there. Basically, $806 in fines needed out. The last slide in your slide deck is going to be the officer status report, and that is basically just a very nice one-page chart where you see all the officer activity up to the current month. But the bottom line is in relative to COVID-19, our numbers are down for obvious reasons. We're taking all those right steps to make sure that the citizens and the officers remain safe throughout this pandemic. There is no school resource officer report because school hasn't been in session since mid-February. And there's really no change from the last detective report that I sent out just a couple of weeks ago. Additionally, with the chief's items, with just a couple of weeks in there hasn't really been any change from that. So thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Cheers, Joe.
Bobby!
There, Joe.
Okay.
Hey, Rondo!
Do we have anybody from the, is our liaison from the Board of Selectmen on the air with us this evening? Okay. Anybody, Alyssa perhaps from the Granite State News? Okay. At this time then, this is going to be a very quick meeting. It looks like What I would like to do is to talk about our hazardous duty pay proposal. In so doing, the course of action that I would like to undertake would be I'd like to make a recommendation to my fellow commissioners. We can discuss that if they wish to, or we can move right to a vote on the hazardous duty pay. Then what I would like to do following that vote, I would like to enlighten, if you will, or explain to our citizens what the hazardous duty pay policy is, how it came about, and why it came about, what our intentions were when we enacted it, why we are giving you this information, obviously, is because it is public information. And if anybody should request a copy of that policy, feel free to reach out to the police department and we'll see that you get one. But at this time, for Commissioner O'Brien and Commissioner Balboni, I would like to make a recommendation that given the current status with the pandemic as it pertains to Wolfeboro, and whereas we went into this knowing that it was a threat-based application and specified amount of time, I'm suggesting we do is we take a vote to discontinue. I'm not going to end the policy, if you will, but we're going to discontinue this particular phase of the enactment effective this Sunday, which closes out the pay week, so it would be May 10th.
I would make that in the form of a motion that we do that.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner O'Brien. Commissioner Balboni, do we have a second? Joe?
Hello,
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Right, seconded by Commissioner Balboni. And Joe, the other thing that I failed to mention when you signed on was everything that we do this evening is going to require a roll call vote. So at this time, Commissioner Bob O'Brien?
Affirmative.
Votes in the
Yeah.
affirmative. Commissioner Balboni also a yes. Commissioner Wood is a yes. So it is unanimous, effective 10 May. This current phase, current adoption of the hazardous duty pay policy is terminated on that date. Okay. So let me just explain to the citizens of Wolfeboro, the voters, what our policy is, how it came about, and so forth, and what it has accomplished, which is what we hoped it would do, and just create a better understanding. First and foremost, I think it goes without saying that our officers are out there in the street. They're in the face of the pandemic. They have been since it began. So not only are they putting themselves in harm's way every day with what we would say are known risks that they are trained to try to mitigate and avoid. But then comes a pandemic like this, which is of a different nature and nothing that they're trained for in the academy. Having the academy myself, I know that for a fact. So we had the first thing that came down mid-April was the federal, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, commonly known as the FFCRA, had provisions in that legislation that allowed municipal employees, or any employees for that matter, to be able to take time off and work from home for an extended period of time, 10 to 12 weeks, although it would be at a reduced amount of pay at 2/3, they could do that. What we were more or less tasked with having to do for the sake of Wolfeboro, so that we could still remain effective as a police department, is we had to not take a stand, but we had to vote to exempt our employees from being able to take advantage of these provisions. And the provisions basically were in regard to staying home, yes, but for the care of a child or another family member, something like that. We have 14 sworn officers. That's from the chief all the way down to our newest hire. It's a 24/7, 365 job. We can't have officers staying home as much as we'd like for them to be able to do it if they have hardship. We can't do that and still maintain a level of safety and security and everything that service that the town of Wolfeboro has come to expect. And in so doing, we also had to exempt our dispatchers for that same reason. We have a finite amount of full-time dispatchers. We only have a few backups. So we also had to exempt them from those provisions to ensure that we could remain functional as an organization here in Wolfeboro. Concurrently, the town manager had to enact that same or exempt the firefighters, fire department personnel, as well as electric department personnel, because these were all ultra essential organizations within the town, and they had to be maintained at full staffing. And we all had to hope and pray that nobody got sick and it got spread throughout a department. And then because there's not a whole lot of places you can go to get additional help if you don't have what you need due to illness.
We've been very fortunate.
We've been very fortunate that we've not had anybody within the organization sick, and we're very grateful for that. Now, moving forward and returning to the policy, the hazardous duty policy, when we met, the commission met with the chief and captain in a non-public session back on April 11th, and we were talking about the exemptions. We also reviewed a proposed hazardous duty pay policy, which is a policy that is at the discretion of the commission if adopted, which we did adopt it. And it can be activated and deactivated, if you will, on an as-needed basis. And what we did this time was we provided an additional $100 per week in hazardous duty pay per employee. And to clarify what I mean by that, $100 is the highest amount that any employee could make. It's based on $2.50 per hour. In order for an employee to get $2.50 per hour, they have to physically come into work. They cannot work from home. So and there were two reasons why we did that. The first is we had to exempt our employees from taking advantage, if you will, of the Coronavirus Response Act provisions as they relate to home care for family and so forth. The other is that I believe it was on April 10th, and it became effective April 13th, the same day that we made our policy effective for hazardous duty pay. All town employees are granted a paid day off a week for, I guess it was called a mental health day, because of the strain and stress of everything going on, again, having to come into work and so forth. So that was granted by the town manager for all other town employees. So our personnel were exempted because of the very nature of their work from being able to get a paid day off. They were also exempted from the Coronavirus Response Act provisions. So we believe that it was necessary to do something for our staff. We had some retirements this year. One we knew about, one was unexpected. They were both senior officers. It freed up money in the budget because of their being senior officers, and we were placing them with rookies, if you will. There is a difference in the pay, so there was a little bit of cash available, if you will. So we opted to adopt a policy effective April 13th, our policy, and run that for a period of no more than 10 weeks. We thought we would be through this for the most part at that time. And as I mentioned earlier, it was based on the threat. And when we enacted this, the curve was still going upward, and we were heading for that more critical time, if you will. So it became important to do that when we did that. And it had some immediate effects in that it was a morale booster, because these people have already been denied other things that other town employees were had the option of. They did not. The other thing that came from this, directly, indirectly, however you want to look at it, was if we incentivized the employees to come to work. So they're reporting to work every day, doing their job, doing it well, and with a good attitude, because they're being recognized for what they're doing, appreciative for what they did for them. And it was the right thing to do, given the times, given the thing. The reason that I asked for the vote that we just took was we've been tracking on this, and we believe that it's the time now, with the curve going down, to step away from this policy. The other thing that we can accomplish by ending it now is, should this spike up again in the fall, we want to be able to reenact this, if you will, if we have to do that. I hope and pray that we're not in this boat again, but should something happen, we do want to have some resources available to do something like that if it should become necessary. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Again, it is strictly a one and done kind of thing for this. So it was enacted for 10 weeks. We began it and ended it for a duration of 5 weeks. So it gives us some flexibility later in the year should we need it. Please, please, please understand that we are not seeking any additional funding from the voters, from the town in any way, that this is funded strictly within our budget. It obviously wasn't anything that we planned to do, but then again, we didn't plan to have people retire as they did. And so we put that savings, if you will, to some good use. It's a very small amount of money when you look at the 5 weeks. And what it equated to, if you want to put it even in a more simpler term, is what we did for our staff, because they couldn't take advantage of a paid day off every week. We gave them what equates to about a paid half a day off. And again, they can only get that full pay if they show up for all of the hours that they're scheduled to work. I do have to say, though, that as of this past Monday, the policy giving all town employees a paid day off per week has been changed to 1 day every 2 weeks, and that'll carry until through the end of March, and then that policy will be revisited. But our hazardous duty policy will end this Sunday. Again, it was threat-based. We feel that the threat has been diminished, and we'll move forward in the best way possible. We just hope that, when I say that we hope and pray that we don't go down this road again, we're hoping that everybody is mindful. Take care of yourself and your families first. Protect them, protect yourself. Follow the guidance of the governor and his requests. And if we all do that, we're all going to be safe, and hopefully we'll get out of this, unscathed as much as possible. Bob or Joe, did you have anything you want to add to that, or?
Yes.
Go ahead, Joe.
I had more people call me up. When are we going to open up the town? I said, it's not up to the police department. It's up to the governor.
This is true. They should be tracking on what the governor's saying, and the business owners are, because they're learning when they can open and so forth. It's going to be an interesting rest of the year. Bob?
My feeling is that by offering this additional stipend to the officers and the dispatchers, we showed our faith in them, our belief in them for doing their work in this very challenging, hazardous time. And I think it was the right thing to do, and I'm glad we did it.
I agree. And, just one. Go
Dave,
ahead. John.
Stevie, what about, everybody asked about the 4th of July parade. I said it's canceled.
Well, I don't know if that's been determined yet or not. I know there's committees that are tasked with looking at the different activities throughout the year. And my understanding is that those task forces, if you will, are a cross section of town officials. So, Chief, do you want to speak to that? Before you do, I just want to add on to what Commissioner O'Brien had just said with regard to our personnel and the hazardous duty pay. When Chief Rondo read the monthlies between March and April, even though the April numbers were down significantly due to lack of criminal activity, if you will, there were still 42 arrests affected in that amount of time. Some of those arrests are hands-on, and again, it's putting our people in jeopardy. And then every time that you deal with somebody that may or may not be infected, there's a whole list of things that follow that. Cleaning cruisers, it really does interrupt the process, if you will, of normal everyday law enforcement. But it's what had to be done. Again, the chief alluded to earlier, everybody has been made aware within the organization of the different protocols that the chief enacted to deal with this pandemic and trying to keep everybody, not just our staff, but the public as well, safe at all costs. So, Chief?
Steve, if I could just, this is Tom Bell. Before we go on to the 4th of July parade, could I just say a few words?
Absolutely.
First, I applaud what you have done, and as a representative of the Budget Committee, I will represent in every regard the wisdom of what has occurred here. There's so many different ways to look at this, but I think once the public really understands what has been done, they will embrace it because it is in the public safety, and it gets the officers who are working very, very hard, committed to what they're doing, and I think it's very, very good. So anything I can do to represent that to the Budget Committee, just let me know. And thank you for your foresight.
Thank you, Tom. Again, for everybody, that's Tom Bell, one of our liaisons to the Commission from the Budget Committee. Matthew, did you want to weigh in?
Hey, Steve, thanks. I was muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Matthew Platch is our other liaison from the Budget Committee. Go ahead, Matthew.
Sure. I think at some point after the 10th, it would be helpful to quantify for the Budget Committee the total cost, and I suspect it's not going to be a lot. And I think this policy has had a lot of benefit. I think the people in town are real pleased with the service that the police department is providing at this point. There's a lot of good information flow. There's a strong presence, and I know that people are comforted by that. So if this has helped with morale, it's been a boost.
Thank you. Yeah, the cost has been minimal. I think it also helps that it only went for a duration, but regardless, it was the right thing at the right time. I think it served the purpose that we hoped it would, and again, I think it was the right thing. We acted in unison. It was a unanimous vote by the commission to do that. So, but we all appreciate the gentlemen with the Budget Committee also, and I thank you. Chief, you've been patiently waiting to tell us about
He got his arms crossed.
events,
I crossed your arms.
task forces or whatever.
So several weeks ago, they being the town administration and the town leadership announced that there would be some task forces created. They created 6 task forces to essentially, Commissioner Balboni, look at the question you raised: when are we going to open the town, and how are we going to do that? And I would say that invariably, a lot of it does rely on what the governor puts out for guidance, and what the CDC and our town health officer and other health and human service virologists and epidemiologists, what they say is the right thing to do, and what is the best practice. So having said that, there's a number of these different committees. There are 6 of them that have been formed, and I sit on 2 of them. One is the 4th of July committee, and that meets for the first time on next Tuesday on 12 May at 10 a.m. And then the other committee will meet sometime in the afternoon. The time hasn't been set, on Wednesday the 13th, and that is really designed to look at how the town is to open up. Once it opens up, what protocols and practices, best practices we're going to use to open up the town, and what that's going to look like, and how we're going to do that. And so that's the intent of the task forces. More to follow. The committees haven't met yet. I know that whatever we do relative to the 4th of July task force, or any of the other task forces in between, up to and include how we open up the town and what practices we use, will be based in science. It'll be based in the data. It'll be based off of sound practices. It'll be based off of what has worked and what hasn't worked in other places, not just in the United States, but also overseas as well. For example, what we know that Italy is now opening up, right? They're going, people are going back to work. They're no longer on a lockdown order, and the people are coming out of their homes after almost, I think, the better part of 3 months. So we're paying attention. We're doing the deep dive. We're looking at that data coming in to help guide us and what the right things to do here is. I want to give a lot of credit right now to Chief Norman Scansey, our fire chief, and also our emergency management director for the town's EOC, the Emergency Operations Command. I am the operations officer. I work hand in glove with Chief Scansey, but he is really the one that had said, hey, look, we've got to really start looking at how we're going to open up the town, and we need to look at how we're going to do that. And that conversation occurred, I think, about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. Captain, is that your recollection as well from the EOC meetings?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
So Norman is really in the know, and his leadership and guidance in this emergency and crisis has been very good. I got to give Norman a lot of credit. He's been a pleasure to work with, and a very knowledgeable colleague to fall back upon. So I hope I at least was able to address some of the questions and concerns out there. But again, whatever we do is really going to be based in the science, and it's going to be based off of best practices and recommendations from Health and Human Service and the CDC. That's really all we can do at this point. We are really in uncharted waters, right? We haven't been through something like this since 1918, 102 years ago. So for all of us, this is really a new fight. Chairman, back to you, sir.
Hold on, Chief. Hello, Rondo.
Yes, sir.
I just came back from Florida, like 3 weeks ago. My wife's been quarantined since March 4th. She won't go out of the house right now, okay? Now, what happens? All these people out of state coming across the border. What the hell's going on there? Can I say something before I open them up? Why aren't the state police time to turn around and go back home?
So that's a good question. In fact, I just wrote a letter, a draft letter. I shared it with the chairman earlier this evening, addressing that very issue. The bottom line is the border between Massachusetts and New Hampshire is still open. The governor hasn't closed the border of New Hampshire. Now, I'm not sure if even the governor has that authority. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know in that regard. I don't know if that's the governor or if that's the president that can do that. So relative to that, the border is open. There's no indication that the border is going to shut down. And people from out of state, whether they're from Massachusetts or New York or Connecticut, if they're coming up to New Hampshire to visit their property, remember, they pay taxes. They have every right in the world to enjoy their property as anyone else does. And as long as they follow the rules and regulations and the requests that have been stipulated by the state and by the governor, I think they're fine. I mean, the bottom line is they come to New Hampshire to visit their property and stay at their second or third home or what have you. They have every right to do that. All of the normal rules and regulations that would apply to us as full-time residents here in New Hampshire would also apply to them if they're coming up here. We would hope and we would ask that if they're coming from out of state, for example, we'll say Massachusetts, for example, if they're coming from Massachusetts and you're going to be coming up here for 2 weeks to stay at your house, say in Port Wedland, we would ask that, hey, do the right thing, bring your own groceries, or call one of our grocers and have them deliver your groceries based off of your needs. If you need medicines, come here and bring your supply of medicines with you, or make arrangements to have the medicines dropped off at your house. There's a number of different pharmacies. There's a number of different services in town that you can get to do that. And I'm sure there are all sorts of people that may be looking for a little extra cash to say, listen, I'll do your grocery shopping, I'll do your pickups. If you need errands run, we can help that. No, that's what we would hope. But the bottom line is if they're coming here from Massachusetts, the same rules apply to them in their second or third or fourth home here in Wolfeboro that would apply to every other citizen as well. Did that help answer your question?
No, I gotta tell you why. As you all know, I drive a dump truck. I saw California just today, car in Arizona. Now, what the hell is this all about? How can it come to this country? New Hampshire. Give me a break.
Well, it could
Where
be.
the hell are they going?
It could be a rental vehicle as well. There's a lot of rental vehicles that have out-of-state plates. So there's any number of different reasons why we may be seeing out-of-state plates on vehicles. They could be rental vehicles. They could be here, again, enjoying their residence, their home. So we just don't know. We don't know what we don't know. My recommendation is we should assume the best and not the worst. And again, at the end of the day, as long as everybody's following the same protocols and the same best practices, I think we'll get through this. I think we'll be okay.
I hope
Chief,
so.
if I could just interject, one of the things that I've observed on Route 28, you have the electric sign that's posted that says to people coming in, if you're coming here and staying, please observe the 2-week time away from going outdoors. And I think
they don't do it.
the responsible acts that the town has done to give those people that message.
Right, there is, and that sign is posted there.
Sign is one thing. People are stupid. What do you want me to tell you? It's the real world. Hello?
Well,
it's the real world.
no.
You're a bunch of idiots.
It is a situation that we've never been confronted with. I think the times today are different, even from when I grew up, and how people react to different things. And unfortunately, and for whatever reason, there are those that are following the guidance of people in the know, if you will, the CDC, the governor, and so forth, and taking all the proper precautions, following the rules, if you will. And then there are those that aren't really bothered by the whole idea of a pandemic and its life.
Right.
And, that's why, we're trying to stress, you take care of you, I take care of me, you know, we take care of our families. And if everybody, and hopefully that'll matriculate down through everybody. I don't for a minute think that it will. There's still a lot of resistance out there. And it's unfortunate because if we open up too quickly, if we return to normal too fast, we could in fact end up worse than we are right now.
I agree with you. Absolutely.
So it's a very difficult time, and we just have to manage the best that we can. And you know, as the chief alluded to earlier, and I've said it over the last couple of weeks on the Facebook page, you know, we don't know everybody's story. We don't know, and that, Joe, kind of speaks to the whole out-of-state license plate thing. You know, it could be a worker coming out of Mass or has a rental car in New Hampshire with an out-of-state plate, but they're moving to a different facility every day, helping out. Again, rental cars are from all over the country. I see more out-of-state rental cars than I do anything registered in New Hampshire. That's just a simple fact. So, yeah, I think we'll get through it. I think as long as everybody maintains their best practices, we'll get through it. And in the meantime, we just have to try to be as positive as possible with our friends, neighbors, and even the people that we don't know. And like the chief said, assume the best. You know, I don't see any. I've heard a lot of comments made. I've seen a lot of things in social media, and I sincerely hope that when this is over, that, you know, we who live in a resort community who depend very heavily on these people that own seasonal properties and come up here, you know, we depend on them to get our businesses and even people that own businesses here, you get them through the rest of the year. If we anger those people, upset them, pointing a finger all the time, and they choose to take their business elsewhere, that's not going to have a good result for the town.
You're right, Steve.
We don't want to have that. We don't want to have that that face of Wolfeboro in the public. We'd rather, you know, try to be welcoming and encouraging, guiding. You know, at this point in time, we're trying to give good guidance and suggest following the governor's edicts. You know, doing all the right things so that we can get through this. So,
You know, Steve, I can say something.
Yep.
Because you're all famous fair is closed.
all the fairs are closed this year, Joe. Every state fair, I believe, is closed.
Oh, God, my God. It is what it is.
We lost your video, Joe.
So the golf courses are opening
I know.
Monday.
I don't know what the hell happened.
Hey, Joe.
What?
Bob just said the golf courses are open on Monday, so you'll be all set.
Oh, yeah. I lost 8 weeks of Florida. No golf.
Oh,
But
Okay.
Bobby, you and I playing golf. You and your wife and my wife.
Anytime, Joe.
All right, buddy.
okay. So our next scheduled meeting again will be June 18th. If I had to make a guess right now, it'll most likely be virtually as this one is being conducted. But it'll be on the third Thursday of June, barring any changes. So it'll be back to business as usual on the regular dates. Do we have anybody out from the general public that is listening, that's online, that wishes to ask any questions or make comments? Okay, hearing none. At this time, I would entertain a motion in the absence of any other business, a motion to adjourn.
Oh, no motion.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Balboni, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. I will poll the commission. Commissioner Balboni,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Aye.
Mr. Wood is a yes. This meeting is now over, and for those that joined us, I thank you very much, and a special thank you to Wolfeboro Community TV.